Hello, Viv, and welcome to Do Good and Do Well. How are you today?
I'm really well, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me here.
Oh, you're welcome. I was just having a quick look on your website actually, and I saw that you have chickens, hens.
I do. I do. Had them
Um,
for years. Well, not the
uh,
same lot for years, but we rotate. We rescue hens. So we rescue them from, when they're about 21 months old from slaughter. So we save them before they get shipped off and
yeah.
bring them here to free range around our we call it the paddock, huge garden. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. We used to have chickens, but then one day the fox came
Yeah, we
and
did used to have a fox problem.
took the chickens. It was the same day that my cat had a mini stroke
Oh,
and my
no.
daughter was about 9 weeks old.
God.
And yeah, we call it the day of the massacre because we just had this cat kind of wobbling around in the kitchen. And then we looked outside, we were like, oh, what's
Oh
happened to the chicken? But yeah,
no.
anyway, I haven't brought you on here to talk about chickens
But
or
I could talk
or
about them all day because I think they're just wonderful and everyone should have them.
oh yeah, they
They
are.
are such
They are.
characters.
Can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
I sure can. I'm Viv Guy. I'm going to tell you something that not a lot of people know. I'm originally from Yorkshire and I live in Lancashire, the whole War of the Roses. If anyone understands that, you've got to be a northerner to probably understand the War of the Roses. I'd be like, anyone international will be like, what's she talking about? War of Roses? Yes. So I live in rural Lancashire and I run a business supporting other businesses, service-based businesses, to market without social media. That's my big passion, my big love. I'm sure we're going to talk more about why I do that
Mhm.
as we get into today's conversation. Yeah, and I've been in business for 19 years now. 19 years. Gosh, that makes me feel old. And in fact, when I started my first business, there was no social media. How old am I really? Exist. It wasn't there. It wasn't a thing, which is why I kind of ended up marketing without social media now. And it's a really weird story, actually. Do you want me to share that bit with you?
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah, really weird because I had my first business for 12 years, which was entirely sort of, as my parents always said, I was blessed with the gift of the gab. So it actually, I just spoke to people and got a lot of work and built a lot of relationships through that and built a seven-figure business over those 12 years. And then I decided there was a lot of bureaucracy. I was a creative. I started the business to be creative and ended up kind of doing all the bureaucracy and stuff because we were built a specialist college for young adults with disabilities, blah, 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 blah. And so we ended up with Ofsted and all of that stuff. And I was like, I'm
Yeah.
bored. It's all bureaucratic. It's a big team. I had a big team and I'd lost the love truly for what I wanted to do, which was work with young people directly, hands-on to that. And I was talking about having a family. And so I was like, I'm going to go back to my creative roots. I'm going to do something creative. So I'm going to do photography. I was like that. Yes, no bureaucracy. Da, da, da. So had my first daughter and at the same time decided I'm going to set up a photography business. And so started just dabbling in every genre possible of photography because I was like, I don't know what genre I want to niche in. So I did
Mm.
everything and tried to market everything, which was really difficult. And at that time, I'd never run an online business. Social media was obviously there now. And everyone, so I looked online because I'd worked with a coach for years in my first business. And everyone was like, you need to be on social media. You have to be. It was the must have, and all of those words that I just don't like using. So I was like, okay, well, everyone said I must be, so I'll be on social media. And I wasn't really a social media user. I'm not that generation that kind of grew up with a third limb being a phone. We used
Yeah,
to have
thank goodness.
landlines that your mum would
I,
kind of be on the other extension listening to you chat to your boyfriend and see what was going on and stuff. That's kind of where I grew up. So didn't have my first mobile phone till I was about 20. And yeah, so social media was not a thing for me. I only went onto Facebook because my sisters both moved to Australia and we were like, we'll share photos and things like that. And then stopped doing that and went to WhatsApp eventually. So yes, I wasn't a big social media user. So it was all alien and new to me. And I started using it. And then I'd had a massive change in my life. I'd gone from running this business, being the CEO, 7 figures, big team, to being like brand new to business again, because it was a totally different type of business. And for some reason, I never thought of I don't know, doing it the way I'd done it the first time. I was just like, well, everyone says now times have changed. It's 12 years later.
Yeah,
I've got to kind of catch up, follow suit, go with the times. It's online, da 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 da. So I just thought, well, I've got to do the social media thing. And I just never liked it from the word go. And I was kind of having a bit of an identity crisis, or whatever you might call it, after having a baby and all of that kind of stuff. New business, still learning what I was doing, unsure, lacking confidence. So I was listening to other people out there. I was turning to the so-called experts, and then I got stuck in the scroll hole that is social media, because hello, it's addictive. And so I would be just on it all the time, supposedly working, but actually just comparing myself to other people and feeling crap about myself. Like, oh my God, I'm terrible. Look at all these amazing people out there. Why am I not doing this? Why is my business not working like this? And it was really hard. So I got into the whole social media, you must market. It's the only way. This is what everything I was hearing. It's the only way to market a business now. It was not doing me any favors. I wasn't feeling good about myself. I did become addicted to social media, but I stuck at it. Mondays used to be my scheduling day, on whatever platform I was using back then, Hootsuite or something. Yeah. And I could literally cry every Monday because I hated it. I just hated having to think about all this stuff that it felt like nobody was seeing. I didn't feel like I was having a conversation with anybody who was hearing me. When you kind of think, like, I feel like I'm shouting.
Yeah.
And nobody's hearing me. And kind of going, I'm good at what I do. Please buy my thing. So it was hard. It was horrible, and it was hard. And I was like, I'm a failure. And so much doubt, because I built a very successful business the first time. And I was like, was it a fluke? What am I doing wrong? All of that. So much doubt. And then so I went through that for a while. And now I look back and I go, God, give yourself a break. You had an under 1-year-old newborn. Massive transition, life change, everything, having a child, changing careers, learning all these new genres of photography, and dabbling and experimenting and playing and trying to master, the online world. So it was so hard, on sleep deprivation, I'll add, because my children did not sleep as babies. I was not that lucky. So I look back now and go, oh God, I was so mean, so hard on myself. But I pushed on, and then I hired a coach who was all about social media. That was not a good move. Hadn't realized that basically the coaching was pay for ads, grow your audience to 1,000, and then you'll be great. So I spent a lot of money doing that, and it was a total bomb. It didn't work, and not the best coach. In fact, the worst coach ever I invested in. And I've worked with a lot of coaches, but I can categorically say that was the worst coach I ever worked with. And not just about the ads, just actually not a great coach, not really kind of sort of tapping into what feels good for you, what's right for you, none of the questions that we should be asking. And at that point, I was heavily pregnant with my second child, because yes, I had them in quick succession. And then when my youngest was born, I decided I was like, right, I'm just going to rebrand this whole thing. I'm going to get a website done, a new website, and I'm really going to kind of go all in on this now and knuckle down, because I've had 2 babies. I'm done with the babies now. I can kind of start to focus. So I was working with a brand designer, and again, I was like that. I'm going to do newborns and babies and weddings and boudoir photography and personal branding. And it was really difficult when it got to actually thinking about how we were going to market that. Was I going to have multiple social media platforms, all this stuff? And, it's confusing messaging. And so we went really far down this route of like pretty close to the website being done. And then I just went, I think I'm just going to ditch everything, because my true love now, I've discovered, is personal brand photography. And so I did. And so I ended up niching in personal brand photography, and everything changed for me. And again, I was still on social media at this point, but I grew that business really quickly. And I grew it to, I think I had my first 5K profit month within 10 weeks of that rebrand, that launch. And so that was totally the right thing. But again, I was still on social media, but not loving it. And that year, I then worked with another coach, Jo Hooper. She runs, her business is called Mad and Sad Club. And she was just what I needed at a time where, yes, my business was going well. I was getting clients, but I still had this whole, I don't like social media and I'm not really sure where I'm going. So I worked with Jo, and it felt like she gave me permission to do what I needed to do. And I didn't leave social media at that point, but it opened me up to the possibilities of not having to do what everybody else tells me I have to do. And I think that's what I needed at that moment. And that started me then on a journey. I then started getting people, other photographers saying, wow, you built this business really quickly. How did you do it? And I was like, oh, this is interesting. So I kind of did some like power hour coaching sessions and things like that. And then I was working with the most amazing women through the brand photography, all kind of rebels. I always attracted rebels. And they would call themselves rebels, who didn't really fit into, a certain sort of bracket within their own niches and within their own industries. And they were like, I don't fit any of those. So I'm a kind of a new entity in my own right. And, and I'm unique and I'm a rebel. I want to do things differently and shake things up. And I think that obviously this is, this whole energy I was obviously putting out, and I wasn't there yet with the whole, let's do it without social media. But obviously there was something in me saying, we've got to own and be who we want to be. And it's really weird now. You look back and go, that's totally who I was, but I don't think I realized it at the time. But I was really attracting these people on some subconscious level, and they were amazing. But again, having the conversations with these really amazing women, a lot of them who were mums, about the stresses of marketing and social media and and how, a lot of them built businesses on word of mouth and through the gift of the gab. And then we're like, oh, now to make it sustainable, I've got to bring in more leads to grow their business. So I'm doing the whole social media, but it's a constant like churn and battle and energetic drain. So this was all kind of happening. And then I started working with another coach because I was like, do you know what? I think my passion here is really helping people. I've always helped people. It's been what I did the photography, loved it. But I was like, do I see myself doing this for the rest of my life? No. I see myself back to really wanting to support other people who were stuck and feeling like I was feeling. And that was the big thing. So it was all very organic. It was a process and a journey. If you kind of go, I wish I'd finished that first business and gone straight to this one. But I don't think I would have been at this business without having that journey. Or I know it wouldn't be. Yeah. So then I was like, right, well, I'm going to start coaching. I'm going to go all in on the coaching. So I hired a coach, Greg Fax. And it was a massive investment. It was like £11,000, which I did not have. But I was like, I've worked with coaches before. I know the power of coaches. I'm going to make this money back. So I hired Greg Faxon. And interestingly, Greg was not on social media. He didn't market himself as a coach that helped people without social media. He would help people market in the way that was right for their archetypes. And actually for me, he was like, social media could be great for you because you're a salesperson archetype. Oh, well, I hated it. I just still was battling doing the whole, I'm on lives, but videos and I'm just talking to nobody. I feel like I'm having conversations with nobody. It just never felt genuine and real. Even if you were having chats with people on comments threads and things, it didn't feel good, but I kept persevering for a while. And I said to Greg, I just want to get off social media. So it's like, well, let's kind of think about an escape plan, an exit plan, a strategy for you. So we started talking about it. And what was interesting was Greg had entirely left social media, as in deleted all his profiles, had no presence on there at all. And all his lead gen came from blogging. That was where his kind of leads came from. And I know actually I've just read his annual review. He's now thinking he needs to do something else because he's feeling maybe burnt out with blogging after years of it, but it's been hugely successful for him. And those blogs will work forever after for him if he keeps tweaking them. So yes, I was working with Greg. And interestingly, during that time, I was still I started attracting people who were coming to me saying it was all around marketing support. But again, I hadn't specified I'm without social media, but I was having lots of people saying, I just don't like social media. Is there a way I can do this without social media? So I was like, well, of course there is. Collaborations and And so again, it evolved. And I think this is sounding really woo for me, but the universe gave me what I needed. And actually, when I was having those people coming to me saying, I want to do this without social media, and there was me showing them how to do it without social media. And then it got to a point, and actually working with Gemma Gilbert, who we both worked with, and Gemma was like, your message is just a bit weak. You know, you're either in or you're out of social media, but you can't really be there and not there. And, you know, and I was like, you know, you're really right. And she was like, what's stopping you? And I was like, all the years of being conditioned by people saying you must be, you have to be. And even though, and I remember sitting down and saying to my husband, I've just had a realization. And he went, what's that? I said, I built a 7-figure business without social media. Why has it taken me until now to realize that I can actually do this business without any social media? And it was like, I don't know why it had taken me, what, 3 years it was to come up with that revelation. And I just, so it was all little steps to get me there. And that was that moment that I went, yeah, I just need to go. And a week later I was gone off social media. So that's a very long who am I? And you can sure as hell edit some of that down. But that is the story. That is how I ended up where I am today and doing what I do. And I'm so passionate now about helping other businesses, because there are so many people who come to me and they say, and you really, like, I just didn't even think that was a thing. Because where do we look to when we leave our corporate careers or wherever we've come from? We look to where we're already familiar. So our community, which is social media usually. So you start going, okay, well, I'm just going to start following threads. And, you know, what is it? A lot of the people that are on social media, the coaches, have built successful businesses via social media, but they did it 5, 10 plus years ago when the algorithm and the reach and everything was so different. Organically to do it on social media now, they're not saying, hey, nobody's really publicizing, hey, actually, you know, organically on social media is not going to do it for you now. They're all kind of like, I built my successful business on social media, you can too. This is what you have to do. And it's not working for people. And I truly believe that social media is the culprit for the demise of a lot of small businesses that have the potential to be amazing businesses and really put a lot of goodness out into the world. And I think those people are kind of shutting up shop and saying, I'm just going to go get I'm going to say proper job here in like 1 year, you know, because it's not working, because they've just tried to market on social media. And I think this, this is a whole TEDx talk in here, I'm sure.
I think you should.
Social media is the demise of the small business.
So much of what you said really resonates, and I think, you know, these are some of the conversations I'm having with my clients as well, which is why I was like, I need to get Viv on the podcast because it's such a, I think there is a conditioning and there is a sense that marketing has to be this way or that way, and our businesses are so nuanced and we all have such different lives and we all have different relationships with social media, and there's nothing more off-putting than feeling like you should be doing something, you know, that, and I think that can really slow us down and can cut off our imagination and creativity around what else is possible. And I think, you know, it's in, you know, as you're talking, I'm, you know, thinking about my own story as well. And I do like social media. I think there can be some real positives to it, but I also absolutely hate it at the same time. Like I think there are real ethical issues around social media. I think it is addictive. I was thinking about my daughter actually, because she is desperate for, she's not fussed about Facebook. I think Facebook for that generation is like, that's like for old people. Yeah. But you know, TikTok, Snapchat, that kind of thing. And she's 12 coming on to 13 and kind of keeps saying, can I have it? Can I have it? And I'm like, no, you can't have it. But then she sees me. And I mean, I tried TikTok. I tried it for about 2 months and I was like, no, don't want to be here. I'm not doing that. But you know, she sees that I'm using, but I have to be really, I try and be really clear with her and say, the reason I use social media, and I don't use it personally as much now, but it's mostly for the business. It's mostly there you know, I have my podcast, which obviously isn't social media, but then I use social media to
Yep.
promote the podcast. But, you know, having to be really clear with her and saying, like, I'm using this really intentionally. I'm only going on it for a certain amount of time a day, you know, but I have to be so boundaried with it because it's so easy, as you say, to get into that scrolling and that comparison of, oh my God, that person over there, they're doing the same thing as me and they seem to be so much more successful. Look at all the clients they've got. Look at the income they're bringing in. They look so happy. I tend to like delete people like that now because it's just too painful.
Not good, too triggering.
Comparisons is the thief of joy, as they say.
Yes.
And so I think what I took from your story there is that seeking your own counsel. You had this thing like, I don't like social media, I don't want to be on social media, and it took you to work with someone who heard you and said, well, that's okay. You don't have to. And then that, you know, it started to become much clearer for you. You got clarity around that. But if we don't listen to what we want in our businesses, and if we're constantly thinking about what other people are saying we should be doing, the noise is just too much. And we're not able to, I mean, that's a bit of a coachy, like, show up as ourselves. We're not authentic because we're trying to be somebody else. We're trying to be the other person because, I should be on Twitter or Facebook or whatever.
But it's really hard, even when you realize that that's not the right path for you, to break away from that, isn't it? Because we look at our peers, you know, and we look at what other people are doing, and how difficult is it to break away from what is the societal norm, you know? And I've been reading, I love Claire Pooley and the Sober Diaries, and I've been reading it for Dry January again. I've read it before. And I was thinking about this, you know, how, you know, like drinking is such a norm in society. And if you don't drink, you know, at weddings and parties and things, you kind of, people look at you differently. And I think it's all, and you don't want to be like that, you know. It's within our genetic coding, isn't it, from the days of saber-toothed tigers and things, that we want to, we need to fit in. And so even though your intuition is saying this is not right, you know, and Martha Beck says it in The Way of Integrity, you know, your whole physical being is saying no. However, it's hard, you know, it's still really hard to do things differently and to actually say, no, I'm gonna be different. I'm gonna be the exception to the rule here.
Yeah. And also because there's something about not wanting to miss out, like that feeling of, well, if I'm not connected with someone on social media, then I might miss an opportunity. I might not see. So it's not all, I don't think it's just about that, promoting what we do and selling our services, as it were, but also about, you know, the opportunities that are out there. And yeah, I mean, I suppose maybe if I was a listener now, I'd be thinking, well, this is all very well, but, but what can I do that's not on social media? So can you kind of share a couple of ways that you have built your business without using it?
Yeah. So before I share this, I just want to say, you know, there are different marketing archetypes, and figuring out your marketing archetype is going to be the best way for you to figure out what's the right sort of strategies, or to give you the guidance around what might be the right strategies for you. So there's 3 different archetypes. So there's the salesperson or persuader. I sometimes people have a bit of a negative sort of connotation with salesperson. So persuader, they're quite persuasive. There's the maven, so thought leader, and there is the connector. So this is the person who has that, you know that friend that you've got that just knows everybody and is always out and always like has a million like engagements in the diary. That's the connector who knows everybody. So So they're the 3 archetypes. So depending on your archetype, your personality, your natural personality, you know, there are going to be different strategies that work for you. And so I'm not going to say like, this is the strategy. The strategy that works for me is very much around collaboration. Okay. For some people, they're like that. Oh my gosh, that's just like the thought of speaking to other people is horrendous. You know, Greg Faxon, he's a maven. Blogging was his like thing. He's a real thought leader. He could sit, you know, didn't have to connect with other people. Very, you know, I suppose I think maybe he's an introvert as well. So depending sort of on your personality type, it's about finding what's right for you. But borrowing other people's audiences, so tapping into other people's audiences, is the fastest way to grow your own audience, like hands down. Blogging takes time. It takes time for, you know, the search engines and the bots to kind of find it all and kind of rank you, and then you need to be ranking in like 1 to 3 for it to actually be effective as a lead gen strategy. So, you know, that does take time. And I'm saying, you know, that's a great longer term strategy. But right now, there's ways to borrow other people's audiences. And that does not mean you have to be going in and guest speaking at all. You could have a freebie, you could have a blog, you could have something that you just want to share, a workshop, whatever it might be, a book, an ebook that you just can email people and say, hey, I've got this thing. Like, you know, I think there's real common ground. Let's have a like conversation. And it's one-on-one. So this is the difference, you know, as an introvert, I think, you know, people think I've got to speak to a big crowd. You know, it's a one-on-one, kind of having a coffee with someone, a virtual coffee, and saying, like, I think we could help each other out here. You know, I think we've got something that could be of real value to one another's audiences to really help, you know, be in service to the people that are in our worlds, and at the same time helping our businesses in that process. So sharing stuff that you already have is a really, really great way. And if you don't have the stuff, create something. And the beauty there is, you know, social media, think about it, you're on a constant content creation churn, day after day after day. You're having to create. You know, the beauty of collaborations is you can create one awesome opt-in per month, for example, or free course or resource or whatever it might be. And you can share that with 40, 50, however many people, and they can share it with their audiences. So suddenly your reach is like, you know, your reach is 10 times greater by doing that than it is, say, on social media, where we know that the algorithms are just not allowing your content to be seen. You know, it's a pay to play machine now. So, you know, organic marketing, there are other ways, and I've shared a free guide with you that's got 21 different ways to collaborate in order to fill your client roster if you're a service-based business.
Yeah, I'll put that in the show notes. I was just thinking that as you were talking then, the thing I really like about collaboration and that idea of kind of leveraging other people's audiences is that if you get the right people, you can have really transparent conversations about that. Because I think there's such a sense that marketing has, you know, we're manipulating in some way. And what I really love is to be able to have a conversation with someone to say, how can we, and I have these quite regularly, like, how can we support others, and how can we each grow each other's businesses or support each other to, you know, to and I've done that a few times with podcast guests, and or, you know, even if there's something about going in and delivering a workshop to a much wider network, you know, I'm also very transparent with that to say, you know, this is really great, and, you know, I love connecting with all these people, and it's great for me because I'm bringing a whole load of new other people into my community who may want to work with me at some point. Well, I run a kind of every so often a free workshop for people, and I know you do too. And I think one of the things that really has seemed to work is me saying, I'm running this workshop because I want to help, you know, I want to kind of give something here, and I'm going to be really transparent. Sometimes people want to work with me and, you know, pay for my services. And people, when I first thought of that, I was like, oh, people are going to think that I'm really terrible and like a really bad human being. And but actually the response has been, I really like that you're upfront about that. And so I think, you know, with any of these things off social media or even on social media, that sense of transparency and just being really open and honest and having a sense of integrity about it, and positive intention. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but I think that is what was sort of coming up in my head.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you're absolutely right that we do want to help other people's audiences, but we want to serve ourselves in the process, because it's the only way to have a sustainable business is to grow and make money and sell. You know, and I was listening to your podcast episode with Lysandra, you know, and it was talking about boundaries and things, and this, you know, we are still businesses. We do have to make money in the process, you know, and I have such a large amount of people that say to me, you know, in my audience, like, you give so much value and so much for free. And I don't have an issue with that. You know, I always said I wanted to give as much away as free as possible, because there are people that will still want help implementing it. You know, I can give everything away and there will still be, you know, and I'm that person that you know, I just want someone, even though it's all there and available and I could listen to it on YouTube or podcasts, I'm still going to want to have a conversation with a real person saying, like, you know, talk me through this and help me apply this to my business. And that's where the difference is, isn't it?
Because you can get somewhere quicker as well. I think I've just written a blog about that, about kind of why you would invest. And, you know, it's easy for me to say because you know, part of this is about me wanting people to invest in me, but you do end up getting places quicker, because yes, we're all capable. You know, you're really capable, you're really resourceful, you can figure it out, but actually having someone alongside of you that can help you implement and help you to help point out your blind spots as well.
And this is it, as business owners, you know, we're in our bubbles, you know, and it's hard to sometimes see what we're missing, isn't it? You know, like you say, those blind spots. And I think that's so, you know, the absolute value of having someone from outside of your company and business come in and actually sort of work with you and support you, because they see the things that you don't see necessarily. And that's what's awesome. And that's what gets you there a lot faster.
Yeah. One of my questions that I ask everybody is the name of this podcast. What does do good and do well mean for you? And I'm really interested in your viewpoint on this.
I've been mulling this one over for a couple of days. It's interesting. For me, do good is very much around, you know, I think there's a lot of, we're in a society, we're in a world where there's a lot of taking, consumerism, you know, and not just consumerism, but we're so self-absorbed, I think, and so busy these days that we forget sometimes to think about others. And this sounds awful, doesn't it? I sound like I'm poo-pooing society in the world, but we're busy. We're very busy human beings now, you know, we're so busy. And so I think we forget to do good sometimes and see good. So do good to me is around taking that time to support people, you know, and as a business owner, how can we give more, do more, you know, and do good? And what does that look like as a business owner? And to me, that's, you know, serving and giving value. And, you know, if someone emails me, replying, you know, with something like thought out and genuine. And I know, you know, we could say, yes, but automations, but you know what, if someone's taken that time to write and say, like, help me, I don't just want to fob them off by saying, hey, yes, you can buy my course for X £1,000. So do good to me is taking that time to put some good out in the world. I do think there's karma, you know, I do believe in karma. So it's about using your gifts, using your skills, and slow, you know, your word this year is slow, isn't it? Or slow.
Yeah, my word of the year is slow. Yeah.
And I think it is that thing that we need to slow down to do more good sometimes. And it was a quote one of my old coaches used, which was slow down to speed up, which is all around like your business and life. And I do think that's the case. And I think to do more good, sometimes we need to slow down and just look around. And I think this is why social media is so fast, isn't it? So instant, instant gratification. We forget to actually take time and have conversations with people, check in. I went to get my fish at the fishmongers the other day. I had not been for a few weeks, and I ended up there for like 20 minutes while he was really sharing about like how he's really struggling because his dad's very unwell and and they're the things that with our world and our society where everything's online and delivered to your door and you don't have the conversations with people. And I think doing good is really around, I think it's around conversations and just slowing down and spending more time with people for real, in real life. That's really vague answer,
no,
but that was where I got to.
I love that. I mean, there's something about slowing down, being more present, having conversations with people, connecting with others. Those micro moments of connection that feel, what's the word? Real, maybe. I don't know if that's what we're, but that I love, because I think sometimes we think about this doing good in terms of changing the whole world. We see so often the people I work with see real social injustice, and of course they have these very ambitious missions because we want to be we kind of want that, but also that can feel quite heavy and challenging, let's say. So really bringing it back to the micro, and we are social beings and we do need that connection, and I think that I love what you were saying about collaboration earlier, because I think particularly if you're a freelance business, you're someone who might sit in their office on their own quite a lot, that finding your allies, finding your people who share the same values or similar values to you, who care about the stuff that matters to you, it's so important to invest time in that, in those conversations, and not, it'd be easy to do that only on social media, and I think it can just feel a bit I don't know what the word is, like top level. Maybe there's not enough depth. I don't know.
I don't think there's enough depth, and I think this is the thing that's missing from social media. To be, you think about when you have a conversation and you kind of, when someone says, "Hey, how are you doing?" You're like, "Yeah, I'm good," but then you have a conversation for 10 minutes and actually you're not good, like the fishmonger. And he's like that, basically in tears, like, "My dad's really poorly, blah blah blah, really struggling, da da da." And that, on social media, what is it? It's everyone's highlight reels, and yes, I know some people are vulnerable and will share like maybe what's going on, but really not often, not to the degree that we do when we have a real conversation. And like you say, so I think there's more depth there, and and this is what's missing. And there's so much research out there around how people have thousands of friends, hundreds of thousands of friends on social media, but actually they are depressed, and rates of depression and loneliness and social isolation are so prevalent now. So actually, you're better off to have 5 in real life friends than thousands of followers and things for me. And this has totally gone off topic. Sorry about do good and do well, but I do think do good and do well needs to be slowing down and actually just really considering, and like you say, being in that moment now and thinking about others, not just our own gain, because it's so easy in today's society to just be very much self-absorbed, and striving, because there's so much out there. You must have 7 figures, 8 figures, 6 figures, whatever it is, and these goals and objectives. And as you say, the people you work with are big, change makers, and we all want to change the world. But I think I've come to realize that it's got to be on a much more local level initially, and hopefully it's the ripple effect then.
And it's moving that needle, whether that's in a and that can mean anything. I often say that it might be that you are someone who wants to change all the systems and structures. I mean, of course we all want that, but also what's possible, and that might be within your local community, that might be for particular group of people like business owners, it might be for a particular sector, the
Yeah.
museum sector or the education, whatever it is. But I think, you know, if we there's something about getting a real clarity on that, you know, what is the bit that you are focusing on, and not spreading yourself too thin, being really present within that, slowing down within that, and then intentionally deciding how you're going to connect with people about that. And if, you know, that might be social media, but if that's something that you absolutely hate doing, which there are many of us, then what are the other things that you can do? So before we're sort of coming to the end, it feels like it's gone really quick.
I know.
Are there any other kind of top tips or things that you would suggest to people, you know, if they come off this thinking, right, actually I really don't want to engage with social media anymore, like what would you suggest being their first steps?
First thing is, I want you to acknowledge that it's gonna be hard. It's like giving up. You know, when you go on a diet and you're like, I'm gonna give up all sugar, or I'm gonna quit alcohol, or I'm gonna do all these things, you know, and how difficult that can be, because it's an addiction. And I just want you to kind of acknowledge that your brain is gonna fight you, and it's okay. You may relapse. I say relapse and be like, go back on. So I just want you to acknowledge and be okay that you are going to go through a whole array of different emotions and feelings, and that's okay. But lean into sort of what is going on for you. Journal. I think journaling is so great. Like, get those thoughts out about, like, why do you want to come off? Like, what is that drive? What is your why? Like, and that reason. And then, you know, I'm not saying come off tomorrow unless you don't have any like business, for example, coming through social media. If you know, if it's just a personal thing, you say, like, just let the world know, and you can keep your profiles live, but, you know, not going on, and just sort of as a digital business card type thing, and saying, or personal business card saying, you know, connect with me here. I'm not checking social media out anymore. Or as a business, you know, check me out here, or here's a link. As a business, the first thing I would say is look to your data, your stats. Where are your clients really coming from? Because actually, you know, a lot of people don't necessarily find us via social media. They hear about us, see us, you know, via something else, and then might go and check us out on social media. And I say, you know, that's the best way to do it. I have a lot of people who might still, like, designers who use Instagram because it's very visual, but they don't use that as a way to really attract people. It's there for people to go and check them out in terms of their work, credibility, a showcase, a portfolio, a shop front, shop window. So think about how you want to use it, if you do still want to use it, and have that presence, as I said, depending on what your business is. And set yourself a plan. You know, what time frame do you want to be off social media? What feels like realistic and good that's not going to impact on your income negatively, you know, or how much can you kind of say, if 100% of your business does come through social media, you know, can you afford to get to the point of 80% of it coming through another means, and kind of lose that 20% and come off social media at that point because that feels right to you? You know, set those parameters of like, what's the goal? Where do you need to be at to be able to leave? But absolutely, like, lean into like that intuition, lean into the data. You know, it's got to be both things. You know, you really need to understand why you want to be off social media. What's the driving force? It's like anything, isn't it? You know, if any habits we want to create, like, what is the why? Why do you want that habit? What's the reason? Because if we don't know that, we won't have the driving force to go through with it and actually see it through.
Yeah. And I suppose I would add to that, there's a, you know, that question of it, if you don't want social media in your life, what do you want instead? And if you're saying no to that, what are you saying yes to? You know, that can help with motivation. If we remember, if we're getting that, like, oh God, I just need to check my phone and pick it up for the 400th time today. You know, remembering, no, I'm saying no to that because I'm also saying yes to whatever. And I was just thinking about, you know, when you were talking, so a lot of the people that might be listening to this run projects, get funding, all of that kind of stuff. And I think what you said about, it's not necessarily about coming off social media completely, but how can you use social media to serve you, and having that, on your Instagram, your top 8 posts or whatever, just demonstrating your best projects, or so that if you have got funders or anyone coming via that way, as you say, it's like that shop front, isn't it? And it doesn't have to be all or nothing, but it's about being really intentional and testing it out, trying it out and seeing what works for you. And if you like, I went off Instagram for a bit and then I was like, oh, I kind of miss it, so I went back on again. But now I'm much more, I don't sort of scroll as much now, but just always thinking, what do I want, and seeking your own counsel, I think, is so important. Thank you. I mean, there's so many things we haven't talked about, as always. But so much has resonated, and you've been really generous with your knowledge and your stories. How can people find out more then? How can we connect with you?
Well, obviously, I'm not on social media, so don't go and look for me there. Come on over to my website, vivguy.com, and there's lots of different ways you can connect with me on there. You can download different free resources, you can listen to the podcast, you can message me, or drop me an email. I will always reply, hello@vivguy.com.
Brilliant. I love it. By the way, go and have a look at Viv's website, if nothing, just for the photos, because I love your photos. They just, I've known you for probably about a year, I guess. And
probably more than that, a year, I think.
And so it's just such a great way where you can see a personality shining through a website. I love it. I think it's really good. Thank you so much. Thank you.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me here.
Take good care.
And the dog stayed quiet throughout. She's not moved. I think I saw a paw twitch a couple of times, but that was it.
Everyone, if you're listening on the podcast, I have the dog on the sofa. You'll be able to see this on YouTube if you're watching. But I'm kind of zoning Adrian yoga woman with her dog Benji. This is what I'm aiming for. Thank you, Viv. It's been great.
Thank you, Sarah. Lovely.